Coming to biography, it's a main form of Muslim historical literature, and of course, we can't overlook the earliest work, or among the earliest works is the autobiography of the Prophet Muhammad, the biography of the Prophet Muhammad by Ibn Ishaq, as narrated by or retold by Ibn Hisham, who was his student. So it's sort of like you knowing about, what, Socrates through Plato or something, right? And there is another book called Kitab al-Tabaqat al-Kubra by Ibn Sa'd. So Ibn Sa'd is another biographer. And in this work, he arranged the lives of the people, important people from Muhammad to his own time, and divided them up in 9 generations. So that's from 6 at the time the Prophet was born to 845. You can see if that would make sense or not. Okay, another very famous name is Al-Baladhuri, and he was a major biographer. He was an Iraqi scholar of Iranian origin, and he has a very important book called Ansab al-Ashraf, or the Book of the Genealogies of the Nobles, and it's a collection of biographies. It's a very detailed history. And then your spare time, you can ask Khalid about, pick his brains about all these books. He has read them back to back. Another writer of a biography was Ibn Khallikan, who died in 1282, and then it was expanded later by someone else. So this again I just want to show that there's sometimes continuity, that people would, somebody would start a book and then somebody else will come and continue with it. And then the last one here, because Don asked about the Crusades, so here this Kitab al-I'tibar was a book of autobiography by Usama ibn al-Munqidh, which told the author's experience fighting in the Crusades. So here we bring ourselves to the Crusades, finally. Okay. There were travel books. These are very important, and your students would love some of them. Somebody started that, type of book, but his name is Ibn, if I can say it correctly, I won't say it. Anyway, okay. So how would you say it? Khordadbeh, as he says. Okay, the form remained the popular one in Arabic literature, but of course the most important and famous one that you might have heard of before is the very last one, which is Ibn Battuta. And he died in 1350, and his travels took, anybody remembers how many years did Ibn Battuta travel? 29 or something, and he married so many women and had so many kids, and I don't know. So, but it's interesting because, again, it tells of places that nobody would know of otherwise. Okay, so the content of geography and travel books, they give a fascinating view of the many cultures of the wider Islamic world. They offer Muslim perspectives on non-Muslim people on the edge of the empire. And they indicate how great a trading power the Muslim peoples had become. And again, they were, huge accounts, included details of geography and history that I guess summarize the previous points. Okay, when we come to the historians, there is somebody with the name of Al-Yaqubi, and then of course the famous Al-Tabari, who again wrote Tafsir of Al-Quran, but also he wrote a history that's humongous. And he died in 923, and I always question how these people wrote all those works, whether they really wrote them or their students copied, their lectures and then they compiled them. But Khalid said that Ibn Asakir has his manuscript, signed by him, and that he was the scribe as well. So it must have been that some people did really write their own work. Okay. Sometimes people focused on one place. So somebody with the name of Al-Azraqi wrote the history of Mecca, and somebody with the name of Abi Tahir Tayfur wrote the history of Baghdad, and the greatest of all Arabic historians and the father of modern sociology and so on, though, is Ibn Khaldun, which I'm sure you all have heard of before. He was born in around 1332 and died around 1406. He's originally from North Africa, I think, and then came and lived in Egypt. And there is the very sad story that after he moved to Egypt, he was waiting for his family to come, and he was standing in Alexandria waiting for the ship, and he saw the ship, and then the ship sank, and all his family died. So that was really sad. But he, you can assign, readings from him for anything: city planning, sociology, history, economics. He was really an amazing guy. Okay, somebody with the name Abu Ala al-Ma'arri. And people find that name very funny because Ya'arri means to take off clothes or something. But so I don't know what that refers to. And he lived from 973 to 1057. He was a blind Syrian from Mu'arrat al-Na'man. I guess that's where his name comes from. So it has nothing to do with clothing. And he's generally thought of as the finest Arab writer of philosophical poetry. So poetry and philosophy, again, could overlap. And his poems were greatly religious, and he seemed to have been disturbed by the shallowness of life and the uncertainties of his age. I always find it amazing that people who would be living around 1000 say things are really bad, we're at the end of the time, humans have come down to new lows, and it's what if they come back and visit our world? Okay, so he thought of the world as a prison, and looked at this as the ultimate goal, which is of course, pessimistic. Ibn Sina is put here for fun. Ibn Sina is a philosopher, of course, but he was of Persian origin, wrote his works both in Arabic and Persian, but again, even though he's famous for things like the canon of medicine, among other things, it's said that the canon of this medical book was written in poetic form. So, or mostly, so you can write medicine in poetry. So these people were Renaissance people before the time of the Renaissance, because you would be educated in music and literature and math and optometry, and so they were really amazing people.